there's the sort of these two documents that you touched on. You have this financial power of attorney. You also have this document that I've seen it called a living will, an advance directive, a medical power of attorney, a healthcare proxy.
Yeah, many different names, right?
It goes by many names, but essentially, it says who makes your medical decisions for you when you become mentally incapacitated to make those decisions. And the classic case is, if you don't wake up from surgery or you have a stroke, these are people's worst nightmare situations. Most of this, I think, is relatively straightforward. And I think everybody knows somebody who's had to make decisions for a parent or a grandparent under a living will. The one scenario I think people have less awareness of, but probably wish they gave more thought to, is sort of this issue surrounding life-saving medical care and particularly life-saving medical care provided once I've passed the point of no return. How does that work? How can that be built into a living will? How can you sort of still control to some degree these medical decisions even after you're really not responsive?
Yeah. So the most common way to do it when you talk about it's kind of has many different names, right? This document. So what in our practice, we call it an advance directive. Okay. So that has two components of it. So the first half of it is naming who that decision maker would be. So that's a healthcare power of attorney or your healthcare agent. So that's who makes the decisions. And then the second part of it is like what you referred to is the living will. So this is your end of life care instructions. Under the law, okay, in New Jersey, a living will only applies to two, it actually only kicks in two very unique or very specific circumstances. Now, I talk about this as if medical care is black and white, and you and I both know medical care is not black and white. But as much as it can be defined, the two situations are one where you have a terminal condition. So that means that, two doctors have determined that you have a medical condition that is going to result in your death within the span of a year. All right. So medical care is not an exact science. How do they know that this cancer is going to kill me in a year? It's a best guess, but you need the consensus of your medical team that no matter what we do, your disease is going to continue to march forward and is going to progress and it's going to result in your death. It's incurable. You're already in that situation. Or scenario two is you have a permanent brain injury and you're in a vegetative state. And the doctors have said you are not going to wake up again, or have told your loved ones you're not going to wake up again. So your living will basically lays out, if I have a terminal condition or I'm in a vegetative state, what sort of life-sustaining measures do I have? Do I want to be put on a ventilator and kept alive? Do I want to have a feeding tube hooked up? If my heart stops, do I want CPR? So on and so forth, okay? So I'll have folks come in and some folks are like, that's it, pull the plug. I don't want to be a vegetable. I don't want to live in that state of mind. They have no qualms at all about saying that. I have other people who say, okay, well, if I'm really not going to get better and if I'm really, I'm not going to wake up again, I don't want to be hooked up to machines. But what if, I'm just kind of stage 2 cancer and I just have an infection and I'm in the hospital or I have a heart attack? Are they not going to, revive me? Or if I'm in a car accident, not that an ambulance crew would ever know this, but, are they not going to, shock me to keep me alive, in the ambulance? And so what I explain to people is these decisions are never taken lightly. In an emergency situation, doctors are always going to they have to do everything they possibly can to save you. So this is really kind of in some kind of like prolonged situation. The family's all been consulted, your healthcare agent has been consulted, and they've made sure that you really kind of fall into these two things. And what I also say to people is what they have to remember about an advance directive and living will is, again, this only gets used if you're unable to communicate for yourself. So what I will say to reassure people is so long as you are awake and alert and understand what the doctor is saying, you can wipe all this away and say, doc, do everything for me. I'm not ready to go. Keep me alive, until I'm 120. You can say whatever you want. You can always change it.
Right. I think you make a good point there that people probably overestimate the frequency with which these things are actually used. I mean, the reality of it is the vast majority of your medical care is still going to be controlled by the medical facility you're at. They're not going to risk their licenses because you have some whack for a healthcare representative saying, no, don't give them that medicine. It just doesn't work.
Well, it's, you and I were talking earlier, and I mentioned that my husband's an emergency room doctor. And, it kind of, I'll be honest, it can kind of be heartbreaking for emergency room doctors, is that they'll have sometimes folks come in from, say, a nursing home, and they don't have this document in place. And the doctors have no choice in that situation but to pull out all the stops, do everything they possibly can to keep this 95-year-old woman alive. And it's tough, it's tough on the person. So it is an important document to have, but like I said, doctors err on the side of doing too much, not too little. So that should never be a consideration. But as if I can add to everything too, another reason to have this, we probably have all known someone who's had to make this heartbreaking decision for a parent, a loved one, even a child, to withdraw life support. And I say to people when they're completing this, you are doing a service, you are doing a great thing for your child to put your wishes down on paper. If you really don't want to be kept alive on machines, have that conversation with your son or daughter, put it in writing, because this is the most heartbreaking decision that they're ever going to have to make. So if they know that they're carrying out your wishes, it's just going to ease that burden a little bit more.